There's this quiet moment that sneaks up on a lot of people in retirement. It usually happens early in the morning. Maybe you're standing in the kitchen, coffee warming your hands, staring out the window like you've done 1,000 times before. But now, there's no rush, no commute, no boss, no clock screaming at you. And somewhere between that first sip of coffee and the second, a thought slides in. Okay, so this is it. This is what I've got to work with. Maybe you've already started collecting Social Security and you find yourself checking the bank account on deposit day, not nervously exactly, but attentively. You notice how quickly that number becomes part of your mental math: groceries, gas, maybe a prescription refill, a little dinner out if you're feeling bold. Or maybe you haven't claimed yet and that decision is just sitting there, hanging over you. Everyone seems to have an opinion. Your brother claimed at 62. Your neighbor swears waiting was the smartest thing he ever did. Someone at the diner says, take it as soon as you can, who knows how long it'll last. And you're left thinking, am I missing something here? Honestly, this moment, this exact uncertainty, is what got me thinking about all of this in the first place. My name is Robert, and I spend a lot of time thinking about money, aging, and why retirement feels calm and steady for some people, while others feel like they're constantly bracing for something to go wrong, even when they've done everything right. And what I've noticed over and over again is that Social Security, this one decision that feels so simple on the surface, is where a lot of that tension quietly starts. Because most retirees don't mess this up by being reckless. They mess it up by being reasonable. They make the decision that feels safe, or obvious, or socially accepted. And years later they look back and think, I didn't realize how much that choice would shape everything else. So today I want to talk through the Social Security decision most retirees get wrong, not in a dramatic, scare you kind of way, but in a slow, human way. The kind that lets you breathe a little, zoom out, and maybe see this decision not as a one-time move, but as part of a longer story you're still writing. Let's start with the obvious temptation. Age 62. That number has a pull to it. It's the first door that opens, the first moment someone says, yep, you're eligible. And after decades of working, showing up, pushing through, dealing with deadlines, bad meetings, sore backs, the idea of finally getting something back feels earned. I mean, you've paid into Social Security your whole life, every paycheck, every year, so when someone says you can start now, it feels almost silly not to. A lot of people say things like, well, I might as well take it, that's my money. And emotionally, that makes total sense. But here's where the problem starts to creep in. Taking Social Security early doesn't just mean smaller checks. Everyone knows that part. It means locking in smaller checks, forever. And when you're 62 or 63, forever feels abstract. You're thinking about next year, maybe the next 5 years. You're not really picturing yourself at 78 or 84 or 91, standing in the same kitchen, still holding that coffee cup, still paying those bills. What makes this tricky is that early retirement often feels like a reward phase. You're healthy enough to travel, you want freedom, you want flexibility. But Social Security isn't really about your early retirement years. It's about your late retirement years. The years when work is no longer an option. When healthcare costs rise quietly but steadily. When inflation doesn't feel theoretical anymore, it feels personal. I've talked to so many retirees who said, at 62, I just didn't think I'd live this long. And they say it with a little laugh, but there's something heavy underneath it. Because when you claim early, you're betting against your own longevity. And most people statistically lose that bet. This doesn't mean taking it early is always wrong. It means the reason people take it early is often incomplete. It's driven by fatigue, uncertainty, and a desire for control, not by a full picture of how retirement actually unfolds. And that's where the mistake quietly begins. At some point, almost everyone hears about the break-even age. You know the one, someone says, well, if you take it early, you come out ahead until about age 78, but if you live longer than that, waiting would have paid more. And people treat that number like it's the whole story. Here's the problem: retirement doesn't happen on a spreadsheet. Break-even calculations assume smooth, predictable spending. They assume you value a dollar at 62 the same way you value a dollar at 85. They assume life unfolds politely. It doesn't. What actually happens is that spending tends to shift. Early retirement is active, later retirement T is protective. Early on, you might spend more on travel, hobbies, home projects. Later on, you spend more on healthcare, help, stability. And here's the key thing most people miss. Social Security is one of the only income sources that adjusts for inflation automatically. Your savings don't do that. Your pension probably doesn't do that. But Social Security does. So when you lock in a smaller benefit early, you're not just locking in a smaller check today, you're locking in smaller inflation adjustments for the rest of your life. That matters a lot more at 80 than it does at 62. I once heard someone say, Social Security isn't meant to make you rich, it's meant to make you resilient. And that stuck with me. Because resilience in retirement isn't about winning the break-even game. It's about having enough guaranteed income when flexibility disappears. Break-even math answers the question, which choice pays more over time? But retirement asks a different question. Which choice helps me sleep better when my options narrow? And for a lot of retirees, that's the question they wish they'd asked earlier. Let's talk about something people don't love talking about, living a long time. Not just living longer than expected. Most retirees I talked to didn't picture themselves at 85 or 90, not vividly anyway. They pictured retirement as a chapter, a phase, not potentially the longest stage of adulthood. But here's the quiet truth. If you make it to 65, the odds are very high that one of you or your spouse, will live well into your 80s or beyond. And Social Security is designed with that in mind. When you delay claiming, your benefit grows, not a little, significantly, roughly 8% per year after full retirement age plus inflation adjustments. That's not just growth, that's insurance. Insurance against outliving savings. Insurance against market downturns. Insurance against rising costs when earning income isn't realistic anymore. People often say, I don't want to leave money on the table. But the bigger risk, honestly, is needing money later and not having enough guaranteed income to cover basic life. And this is especially true for couples. Because when one spouse passes away, one Social Security check disappears, and the survivor keeps the larger of the two. That means delaying the higher earner's benefit isn't just about you. It's about protecting the person who might still be here long after you're gone. That's a heavy thought, but it's also a loving one. I've seen widows and widowers who said, I don't know what I would have done if we hadn't waited. And I've seen others quietly say, I didn't realize how tight things would feel after he passed. Longevity turns Social Security from a math problem into a legacy decision. A lot of people plan to claim Social Security early and keep working a little. That sounds reasonable, stay active, bring in extra income, ease into retirement. But Social Security has rules, and they're not intuitive. If you claim before full retirement age and earn over a certain amount, part of your benefit gets withheld. Not taxed, withheld. Now, yes, you may get some of that back later in the form of higher benefits, but emotionally, it feels like punishment. I've seen retirees genuinely confused. Wait, I'm working, earning money, and they're taking my Social Security. It creates stress where people expected freedom. Delaying Social Security while working often leads to a cleaner, calmer transition. You use earnings now. You let benefits grow quietly in the background. It's not glamorous, but it's smoother. And retirement, honestly, is less about optimization and more about reducing friction. Here's another piece people don't think about until it shows up. Taxes. Social Security can be taxed depending on your total income. And the thresholds, they haven't changed much in decades. which means more retirees are getting caught in tax traps they didn't anticipate. Claiming early while pulling from retirement accounts can increase how much of your Social Security becomes taxable later. Delaying can sometimes give you a window, a few years, to manage withdrawals more strategically. This isn't about avoiding taxes entirely. It's about controlling when and how they show up. And control feels really good in retirement. Here as something I don't hear discussed enough. Claiming Social Security is emotional. It's a line in the sand, a signal that work is behind you, that a chapter has closed. Some people rush it because they're tired, burned out, done. And that's understandable. But sometimes waiting, even if you could claim, gives people a sense of agency. A feeling that they're choosing, not reacting. Retirement isn't just about money. It's about identity. And Social Security quietly touches both. To be clear, this isn't about guilt. There are absolutely situations where claiming early is the right call. Health is. Sue's financial necessity, lack of savings, peace of mind. The mistake isn't taking it early. The mistake is taking it early by default, without understanding what you're trading away, without seeing how long retirement might actually last. A thoughtful decision, even if it's early, feels different. It feels settled. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's this. Social Security isn't a reward for stopping work. It's a foundation for the rest of your life. And foundations matter more the longer you stand on them. Most retirees who wish they'd decided differently don't say, "I messed up." They say, "I didn't realize." They didn't realize how long retirement would feel. How much comfort comes from guaranteed income. How much calmer things feel when fewer decisions are left to make. If you're still deciding, take your time. If you've already decided, give yourself grace. There's no perfect choice, but there is a more informed one. And sometimes just understanding the trade-offs is enough to bring a little peace. You've worked hard. You've carried responsibility for a long time. This phase isn't about squeezing every dollar. It's about making the years ahead feel steady and yours. And that's a decision worth slowing down for.